Real life.
Hi guys, welcome to Calcutta Apologue. This is the sixth episode of CASpeaks. I am Sahil Chatterjee, the CEO and founder of Calcutta Apologue. So today we will be talking about cinematography. We have Sayan Basu with us today. Sayan Basu, hi Sayan.
I
Okay, so those of you don't know who Sayan Basu is the cinematographer of Calcutta Apologue. He has worked in various projects, including a lot of short films, documentaries. He has recently worked in a web series in Z5. The name is Mafia. Mm. So, Shayan, uh,
yeah.
okay, for our viewers, let us tell you again. Today we will be discussing different aspects of cinematography and how you can, make a film with a DSLR. And that's all. That's all about today. So, Sayan, I would ask you firstly. mm, Tell our viewers and abrupt and a brief description of cinematography.
So firstly, I need to correct one thing. That's Sayan Biswas and not Basu. And then I'll move on to cinematography.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so,
That's the mistake I keep making.
so what is cinematography to me? Cinematography is basically the art of visual filmmaking through lights and camera. To me, cinematography is simple. You need lights and camera to create visuals and to make stories with that visuals.
Okay, that's absolutely easy for the audience to understand. I hope people have already joined in and trying to focus on what you are saying because things are about to get really serious on these topics. And people, if you don't focus properly, you won't totally get the idea of how things work because these are absolutely technical things and you have to focus on each and everything that Cyan has to say today. Okay, so
Right.
Shayan, we will be discussing the elements of cinematography for our audience. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's start with the basic things of the basic elements of the cinematography.
Okay. So what are the elements of cinematography? We need basic things, that basic knowledge of cinematography to start shooting. So what are they? So at the first point, I'll go to the first element, which is the resolution. What do you mean by resolution? So
Okay.
resolution is basically the image details on the screen, number of pixels in the screen. And how do we calculate resolution? The It's the numbers which are you are seeing above, other width, other sorry, other height, and in the below, that is 1080 1920
Yeah,
into
absolutely.
1080 is the full HD. So 1920 is the
Absolutely.
width and 1080 is the height. And when we go to HD, that is 720p, 1280 into 720. 1280 is the width, 720 is the height. So like
Uh,
that, we go to SD, Full HD, and we have 4K. So as we go towards HD to 4K, our image details increases. So better the resolution, better the image.
yeah, absolutely. Looks like there is a huge
Yeah,
development in this resolution
resolution.
from HD to 4K.
So now there's resolution like 8K, 15K. So
Yeah,
resolution.
it goes on. Okay,
So
Sayan,
I'll
there
move
is
to
one
the
question
next element.
regarding resolution.
Yeah,
There is one question regarding resolution. Uh, our viewers might be interested in knowing that with the DSLR, with a normal DSLR, what is the basic or the highest resolution they can achieve or they can have actually?
now the basic DSLRs, full frame DSLRs are giving till 4K, like GH5, Sony A7S, they are giving 4K. Even now, few DSLRs like Blackmagic pocket cameras, they are giving up till 5K, 6K.
Yeah,
So
Blackmagic is doing pretty good in their own field.
yeah, they are doing pretty good in sense of resolution. So they are giving 6K.
Wow, that's that's quite a thing. People might not be having enough memory to shoot in 5K or 6K.
Right. The more the resolution, more storage.
Yeah. Okay,
So
so
okay.
let's move on to the next point.
So our next point is FPS, that is frames per second. The number of frames we
Okay.
see in 1 second. Right. So it is very important in cinematography. So what is the basic frame rate? So basic frame rate in India is 25 FPS. So and as we increase the FPS, we know there's more number of frames in 1 second. So if we want to do a slow motion, we'll increase our FPS. And on the FPS, another thing that depends is our shutter speed or shutter angle. So you need to carefully learn and understand what is frames per second. It is very important for slow motion videos and for normal videos. So
Okay,
I'll
Sayan, there are few questions. These days there are these few FPS, normal frame per second things that have been practiced. One is 24 FPS, one is 25 FPS, one is
yeah.
26 FPS, and one is 30 FPS. Can you
Yeah.
tell us the difference between all these four in a brief?
24 what is 20, 24 fps is mainly used in films, the feature films we use in film cameras mainly for the projector basis films, and 25 fps is mainly for the web shows or internet, YouTube, Netflix. We use 25 frames in that. And what is 30 fps? 30 fps is normal shooting rate in US, other than India. In international, that is the international standard, 30 FPS. That is mainly 29.7 FPS.
Okay, okay. That's really nice. Okay, let's move ahead.
So our next element, the major thing is exposure. We need to understand how exposure works. Exposure is mainly how much light enters the camera. We need to handle light very carefully as our sensors are very sensitive these days. So first thing is shutter speed, understanding shutter speed. So as we increase the shutter speed, we get more sharp images. And when we decrease the shutter speed, we get blurry images like you see here. When we shoot in 1 by 2 of a second, we are seeing blur images. So when a
Absolutely.
car passes by, we'll see a blur image of a car passing by. Or here a man is running. So we cannot see a sharp image of him. At the same time, when we are shooting in 1 by 500 second, we are seeing a sharp image of the man.
Yeah.
So this is shutter speed. This has been taught in photography. In cinematography, there's a slight change. It also depends on the FPS. So if I am shooting in 25 FPS, I would like
Yeah.
to shoot 1 by 50 shutter speed. When I'll go for slow motion, like I'm shooting 50 frames per second, I'll use 1 by 100 shutter speed. So you need to understand shutter speed. Also, you can be creative with shutter speeds when there's high drama, high action scenes. You can choose higher shutter speeds, like 1 by 100. You can choose that during action sequences. Also, shutter speed, how shutter speed is related to exposure. When we increase the shutter speed, we see less amount of light is entering the camera, and when we decrease the shutter speed, more light enters the camera. So shutter speed is also related to exposure. Next thing, which is very important again, is aperture. What is aperture? Aperture is basically the hole through which the light enters to the sensor. So bigger the hole, more light comes in, and smaller the hole, less light comes in. So we see less aperture, that is f1.8. Major light comes in. It's totally, the gates are open, the hole is totally open, and all the light that is available there, it comes to the sensor and hits the sensor. Also aperture, what does aperture does? It also helps in depth of field, that is commonly known as the blur, which we understand as the blur in the background or the bokeh used in simple terms. So what is depth of field? Depth of field is basically the area that is in focus. So if we increase our f-stops, we'll be increasing our depth of field, that is the area of focus. And when we are decreasing the f-stops towards f point f1.1, we are decreasing the depth of field. So the area will be smaller. So it
Yep.
is very important to know what is aperture is. Also, it helps in maintaining the exposure in the camera. So next thing that is important in exposure you should know, that is ISO. What is ISO? This is, by the way, this is another thing which I was talking about was depth of field. See, this is the image where there's a rabbit and the focus is in the first part. There's the focus is on the rabbit. So this
Yep.
is aperture here might be like f2.8. So foreground and the background are out of focus and the rabbit is in focus. In the next scene where we can put f22, the whole plane is in focus, mid foreground, midground, and the background. So this is the depth of field and aperture relation. So in the next slide, I'll show you. Check here the bokeh or the depth of field again. In f1.4, it's totally blurred, the background, and if in f22, everything is in focus. This is how you need to choose your aperture. Either you need to control your light or your depth of field or both using aperture. Next, I'll move on to ISO. As I was saying, what is ISO? ISO's full form is International Organization of Standardization. And what does it do? ISO. ISO is basically the image pixel sensitivity, the light sensitivity of the pixels. As we increase the ISO, the sensitivity of the pixels also increases. So the amount of light falls on single pixel keeps on multiplying as we increase the ISO. Like you see in ISO 100, it's the same light there, but it's very less comparing to ISO 1600. There's the light which is coming in ISO 1600 is totally multiplied 16 times. So you can understand how ISO works, but there's a big disadvantage of ISO. Increasing of ISO is there are lots of grains which comes up after a native ISO. What is our native ISO? Native ISO is the base ISO after which grains comes in. So to me, I try to maintain my ISO till 800, ISO 800, and I don't go beyond 800. If there is like I have no lights available and I have to increase my exposure, then I might go to 1600 or 3200. That will be the last option, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes, Sahil.
Okay, so that's it. I guess that's all the elements of cinematography properly covered. I hope our viewers has totally understood what you had to convey. Due to lack of time, we will be moving towards the 5 C's of cinematography. It's very important for the viewers to understand each and every C properly. So, Sayan, I would be asking you to move ahead with that.
Yeah, so 5 C's of cinematography is very important. It's the 5 finger rule. So, what is the first C? I'll move on to the first C. First C is the camera angles. You need to know about the angles because it is it sets up the mood totally. How many angles are there? Let's discuss. There's first the aerial angle where the camera will be overhead the subject. Then we can go to high angle where the camera will be a bit above from the eye level. Then there's a normal eye level angle during normal conversation or interview we use this angle. Then we have low angle shots. In low angle shots, we tend to show our subject as a dominant subject as the camera is lower than the eye level and the subject is taller. We we generally show the character is more dominant in scene, and in high angle shots, as the camera is above the character, it tends to show that the character is suppressed and not dominant.
Yeah.
So it's according to the narrative. Then also there's a eye level I told. Then POV angle, the camera becomes the subject itself. So you'll see a lots of POV shots in action sequences or horror films where the camera itself becomes the character. So you need to choose your camera angles very wisely and according to the narrative. So I'll move on to my next C, that is camera movements. Okay,
Yeah.
and there was another angle, important angle, that is the Dutch angle. So what is Dutch angle? We use this in some psychological films to show uneasiness. The camera is tilted at a certain degree so that it's not normal to our eyes. So it is a bit distracting. The shots are bit distracting and not normal. So if the scene is like where the character is under some influence of alcohol maybe, or he's mentally unstable, we can use such shots. Okay, so we are done with our camera angles. We'll move on to our camera movements, which is the second C of cinematography. What are the camera movements? What the basic movements are? To our next slide. That is tilt up and tilt down. That is our vertical movements. When we are showing a building, we need to establish a building. So what we'll do, we'll tilt up, showing it from its ground floor to it till its terrace and the sky. That's a tilt up shot. Tilting down, maybe if something drops from our hand, from our character's hand. So we'll show what is that thing that dropped on the floor. We'll tilt down to that object on the floor. Then we come to pan. Pan is the horizontal movement. Pan right and pan left. Pan Panning helps to establish a scene or an area mainly. Dolly in, dolly out. Dolly, what is dolly in, dolly out? It's basically the camera is on a slider or on tracks. So dolly in, basically the camera pushes in towards the character, and dolly out is what camera comes back from the character. Then there's a pedestal shot. Pedestal shot is the vertical movement. The camera will be in a static position. Just the movement of the camera will be up or down. So we can use this type of shots in introduction of characters, where we start from his feet and the camera goes up, up, up till his face. And that's how we can reveal our character. Another thing is struck left. What is struck left or right? That is sliding our camera right or left. That's We can do that again using a slider or a track dolly. So
Yeah.
these are, yes, Sahil.
Yeah, that's absolutely everything. There is one question I wanted to ask you in behalf of our audience. Can our audience do a dolly zoom with TSLR?
Yes, yes, definitely. Dolly zoom is also important in some narratives. How can we do dolly zoom using a DSLR? Firstly, we
Yeah.
need a zoom lens for that. Also, a slider or a track, maybe. So, how a dolly zoom works, we push the camera in so far goes in. At the same time, we need to zoom out using the lens. So, it gives the effect of dolly zoom. At the same time, we can do the opposite. We can pull the camera behind on the slider, and at the same time, we need to zoom in the lens. So, in both ways, zoomy dolly zoom works.
That's really
Hope that
nice.
works.
Yeah, that's really nice. Okay, let's
Yeah.
move ahead.
Next C is continuity. Continuity is again very important. That is avoiding any type of jerks on the screen. In continuity, I would like to talk about the 180-degree rule in cinematography. So, what is 180-degree rule? In 180-degree rule, when there's two persons talking to each other, we tend to imagine a semicircle, and we tend to imagine a line between them, where you can see here in the image there's a dotted line in between the characters. So what we'll try, we'll choose one end of the semicircle, one side of the semicircle, and use that semicircle to put our cameras there. So, like in this image, I've chosen the semicircle below, and I'll put my three camera angles on that semicircle side. And if I tend to put one camera on the other side of the semicircle, it will cause a jerk. And how that jerk will cause, I'll show you in the next slide, please. See here. So you can see the images, how it's working in the semicircle, which is in green. These are perfectly shot, but in the red area, you can see the characters talking, and their look is different. The person who is in blue, the character in blue, his eye line is different than the camera placed in green just below. Check the eye line, it's totally different. So it may cause jerk to the audience, and we will try to avoid such circumstances. Though 180-degree rule can be very creative, we can use that in few narratives. Like, I'll just say there's a climax scene, like two friends are talking to each other, and all of a sudden, one of the friend reveals something that the other friends cannot take. It's a shocking revelation. At that time, I can jump the axis because it should be a jerk to the audience also. It's a revelation that the audience also doesn't know. It's a shocking revelation. So at that time, I can use or break this rule. So continuity is also important. Also, there's a space continuity, time continuity. We should have all that in mind. Like, we need to shoot in different days. We need to keep in mind the costumes the character is wearing. He should be wearing the same costume every day. Hand movements, the actions in which hand he's holding a cup in every shot. So here I would suggest first you take the master shot and then you go to the close-ups. So it will be easier to follow the master shots because you will see both the characters doing their movements. And then when you are going to close-up shots, your continuity supervisor may advise the characters that you were doing such actions in the master shots. So maintaining continuity is very important. Yes, Sahil, do
Okay.
you have any questions here?
No, I am absolutely okay with the continuity. It's a very important thing to me. And actually, I love this whole 180-degree rule thing. And I don't really like breaking it. But still, few people these days tend to break it for their own, sense of drama and confusion and, uncomfortable this feeling. That, yeah, that's their own narrative, maybe. Anyways, let's move ahead with
Tend to
the.
it's totally on the director and cinematographer.
Yeah, absolutely. They want to create the uncomfortable feeling inside their audience by breaking this whole rule. But I don't really feel good about it. It's like a more like a jerk to me than like uncomfortable feeling. So yeah, I don't really like it.
And also, in a lighter note, to avoid such circumstances, if there's an integration scene, you can use a round dolly, 360 dolly. So there's no cut
Absolutely.
in between. Keep going on.
Yeah, that's even a better
That's on
option.
the lighter note. That is not suggested for every shot you do.
Yeah, but yeah, sometimes you can. Like people these days in the web series go for that. It's easy to achieve, takes lesser time, and easy in the editing procedure also. Anyway, Sayan, let's move ahead with the next C.
So next is again important, that is composition. Everything is our composition, what we see in our frame. So what I'll be discussing in composition is the rule of thirds. What do you see in the rule of thirds? This is the grid. You can see the intersecting points here. We'll try to place our objects or in this intersecting points. It this intersecting points are basically the most emphasized points in the image. So when there's an image of a person or a portrait, we'll tend to place his eyes in this intersection points, or when we are shooting any object, we'll again try to put it in the intersecting points, or if or we can also do it in the boxes that have been formed by these grids. So moving on to our next slide, here I'll talk about the negativity and positivity. What is positive positive section of a frame? The positive section is the character itself. And what do we know about the negative space? Negative space is the blank space of the frame. So how does it help? Negative space can be used very wisely and very creatively. Like in this picture, we can see there's nothing than a person, and who isn't very small in size. It's looking like that, the perspective. So what we can imply from that, that the person is very isolated, in solitude, and depressed maybe. So we can use negative space very creatively. Then to our next slide, here we see two images. On the left side, we see the image of a man looking at something. So we give him space to look there. We have the main space on the left side of the image. Whereas at the next image on the right, we have cut the space there, and the major space is on the right side. So what implies that in the first picture on the left, we see the that the person is looking a vast scenery or something larger, but on the right side of the image, his image is blocked, his vision is blocked, he cannot see beyond a point. So both images tells us different stories. This is how we can use spaces, positive spaces and negative spaces, and this is how we can compose our frames. So you can compose your frames totally to your skills and creativity. That's up to you. And then moving on to our last and next important C, that is our close-ups. What is close-ups? Close-ups are basically use other shots which is used to show the emotions of the characters or to show the minute details of an object. Like for an example, I'll show you a shot from Get Out. To the next slide, please. See how the character shows his emotion, and this is a shot of close up, how he conveys his emotion to the audience through a close up shot. If this shot was taken in a wider angle or wider shot, we couldn't have seen his emotion, his tears, like we see here. So close ups are very important, and I'll tell an example how it works. Like there's two unknown friends, two strangers conversing. They are meeting for first time. I'll take a wider shot to establish them, and then once they get talking and gets to know each other, I'll go to mid shot, because they are now like no getting to know each other. And then all of a sudden one of them starts talking very personal things about his family. Now I'll go to his close up shot, because it's now very close top with his partner. So I'll also go for a close-up shot. So this is how wide and close-up works. So here I complete with my 5 C's of cinematography.
Thank you, Sayan, so much. That was quite informative. Uh, okay, there are a few questions that we have already faced from our audience, and we will be taking few more questions in the Q&A sessions. I would ask the moderator to start coming up with questions, and Shayan, I would be really great if you keep answering them. The first question is from Sangram Chowdhury. He is asking, what is the perfect way to shoot a tight close using 50 or 35 lens?
Hello, Sangram. This is a nice question. Now, the thing is 35 is a bit wider lens. So you can discuss it with the director, or if you are the DOP, you can choose it like if you want the face to be a bit wider, like if you want to see more of the background with the close up of his face, then you will use the 35 mm. But when you want like a less background or tighter frame, you will go with the 50 mm, more close up shot. Prime lenses, both are prime lenses. 50 mm is the normal eye level lens, like we see through our eyes. So it's totally depending on the DOP and director what you choose. If the director says I want a wide close up, then why 35? You can even go to 16 mm. We can use 16 mm for wide close ups too.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, because see, sometimes like the shot you came up from lights out, isn't it? It
Yeah,
was most probably shot in 35 I guess.
yeah. Sometimes it's like we want to see the character in a unstable, unstable character, or his mentally unstable, he's confused. So we can use wide close-ups there. All the background distorted with his face. It works with the narrative.
Yeah, really. Because see, even in extreme close-up, sometimes it's really nice to expose things that are there in the background or by the character's side, isn't it? So yeah, but though anyway, 50 is the best decision. Okay, next question, please. Often we
Okay.
see shaky movements in the camera. What impact does it have? Or exactly what do we implement it? If possible, can we explain how? Yeah, sure. Shayon, please, if you may.
Yeah. So it's basically you're talking about handheld movements, how handheld movements are gives impact to our images or our narrative. We use handheld or shaky movements mainly in action sequences or in thriller films where we want to develop tension. So the character is not always stable there. He has tension. So what we want to show with the shaky movement, that the camera is also not static. It's constantly moving. It's a bit shaky. And during the action sequences, uh, handle movements are the priority, I feel.
Yeah, that would be really nice. Actually, there are a few examples what we could have discussed, but we don't really have the time. But yeah, there are a few, great examples that you should see for this Seki action things and everything. But anyway, let's move on to the next question. For someone who can't afford a
Sure.
camera stabilizer, how can she shoot a film with proper stability?
Okay. There's a hack I'll tell you of with a DSLR. Use your DSLR strap very wisely. How you can do it? Just put your DSLR strap around your neck and take the DSLR, stretch it till your strap lets you, and tighten the strap totally. Walk with that. It will help you in stabilizing the movement rather than holding it like this on hand and moving. Hold it like this, tightening the strap, and move with the camera. if you don't have a DSLR stabilizer like gimbal or something.
Yeah, that's really nice. Okay, next question. We won't be taking a lot of questions, but we will be taking few more questions, like two or three. Okay, Shagnik Ganguly is asking you, I have a plan to shoot a short film very soon, but because of this pandemic, it would be self-shot by the artists, and I will give the directions to video call. That's absolutely
Okay.
okay. People are actually making quarantine films, quarantine shots. That's absolutely nice. Though, Sayan, yeah, I would like you to suggest few technical tips to the director, and so that he can, direct his actors and the workers to shoot the thing easily.
So there's a question related to that, I think. Um, the plot is completely based inside the household atmosphere, roaming around 11 to 12 p.m. in night. So, what tips you would like to give me first? Okay. Okay.
This is
So,
tough actually, but yeah, Sayan can help you.
what main thing what our characters like our actors don't do? Tell him the first tip. First, choose what you want. Like most of them don't have DSLR, the actors, so they tend to shoot with their mobiles. And when they shoot with mobile, they try to hold the camera vertically. So that is not the correct way for our films. The first tip which I'm giving you, and tell your actors to hold the camera or keep the camera in horizontal position. It will help you in editing so that in three actors, two of the actors shoot in horizontal and one actor shoots in vertical. You cannot edit that. It's going to be a scrap. So keep that in mind. And also, and the next thing is like time. Try shooting in simultaneous times. Like if you are shooting at 11 or 12, that doesn't matter. You can shoot at 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. That doesn't matter. If you are showing the time in the scene is 11 or 12, that doesn't matter. You can shoot. Just be assured that the scene outside is dark. If the actor starts shooting at around 6 p.m., there's still a twilight, so there's a light outside, and it cannot be 11 or 12 p.m. in the scene. So these are the major mistakes that they do. So keep these things on mind. And also, I've given few tips and I've told about exposure. Try to brief them about exposure a bit, how they can maintain the light.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Shayan, we are running out of time. We will be taking two or three more questions and then we will be ending the session. Okay, here is another question from Aryya Khasnobis. Does the director needs to have the basics of camera movements and coordinates with the DOP for shooting a scene, or is it fine for the director does not have much knowledge on cinematography? Okay.
Okay, it's a good question. And it's basically there are many directors who may not have the technical knowledge of cinematographies, but it's always a added bonus or plus point to know about the camera movements for a director, because the camera movements play a key role in every scene. Like a dolly in shot where there's a intense scene, an intense conversation going on. If the director tells for a push in, it it is, and he understands what is the meaning of that push in, it will help to the narrative and the scene, because a dolly in shot is basically what we are going from a wide shot to a close up shot or a mid shot, so it adds to our scene. This push in shot can also be a suggestion from the DOP to the director, but the director should understand what the DOP wants to say. What is this dolly, and how it will help in the scene. It's always a added point knowing about cinematography for the directors. about the camera angles and camera shots. The
Absolutely.
directors may not require to understand lighting. Cinematographers are there to do that and to show the scene beautifully and lit up the scene.
Absolutely. That's my point too. Director doesn't need to know the elements of cinematography, but they at least should know the basics of camera angles and movements
The
so
five
that they
C's
can,
of cinematography. They should
yeah,
know about the five.
that they should know them. At least they should have the knowledge so that they can, figure out the narration, the visual narration of the film or the video you're shooting, and in that way they can discuss. And there are actually new movements coming in, camera movements and angles coming in with different equipments that are being, invented each and every day. But at least we expect each and every director to know the basic movements and the angles so that, yeah, the team of director and cinematographer can actually make up something interesting. Okay,
Right,
so
even the
let's go to the,
treatment. There's
yeah,
I would
absolutely,
that is the treatment of the film. So it's the director's choice, mostly the treatment. Like we can shoot a whole film using a handheld camera, and there's a whole film where the camera is static. So it depends on the director and the DOP. They should be very well versed with the film and
absolutely,
scenes.
absolutely.
So I'll
Okay,
move
so
on
this
to
will
the
be our last question. Actually, we won't be having enough time to take more questions. Anyway, Shomo is asking, I am a beginner cinematographer, done some short films and advertisement works. Now, how can I get proper film and web series work, or how you got the chance to join Mafia web series team? Okay, this is a nice question.
Yeah, that's a nice question. So firstly, you need to shoot. You shoot the short films. You have shot enough advertisements and short films. Create a showreel. If you want to uh, pitch yourself to a production house or to someone who wants to see your work, they might not have time to see each of your work. So choose your best shots, edit them, and make a showreel to present to them. It helps a lot. It fetched me few works also. So and my turn of going to a mafia. So it's basically I didn't go as a DOP. I was the assistant director there in the mafia web series in Z5, and it happened through contacts, basically through networking. It is also a major part. Talk to people, share your thoughts with them, and also watch more movies. Talk to the directors, talk to the cinematographers, and talking to them helps you fetch work. The networking helps you a lot in this field. This is my belief.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's enough for today. Okay, there is one more question. Compliment actually. A man behind a lens is a gem to the filming team. Kudos to you and all the best for your future endeavors.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Sayan.
much, Joe. Thank you.
Okay, so with this, we will be ending our session today. Uh, I hope our viewers has enjoyed this whole session and acquired some knowledge about the technicalities of cinematography. That's all for today. We will be announcing our next episode on. We will be doing it on 9th August, this Sunday. Keep your eyes on our YouTube channel and do subscribe to our channel. Thank you. Good night.